Okay, so today we're going to be talking about 1 Corinthians 15:29 and the idea of baptism for the dead. It's one of the more controversial practices of Latter-day Saints. I don't see why, because it comes from the Bible, but regardless, there's a lot of controversy surrounding our practice of baptisms for the dead, and hopefully I would be able to answer that controversy with this video. Now, all of the sources I'm about to use, except obviously for the verses themselves, or the verse itself, I should say, is none of it's going to be biased towards Latter-day Saints. In fact, it's all going to be biased against Latter-day Saints, so that you can't accuse me of getting my information from biased sources. Okay, so I have 3 Bibles, and they're all different kinds of study Bibles, and they're all different translations as well. I have the Dake's Annotated Reference Bible, Old and New Testaments, Concordance. It's a King James Version. I have a Catholic Study Bible, well, New Testament anyway, Revised Standard Version. Then I have this Bible, the Reformation Study Bible, English Standard Version. So, 3 different translations, 3 different study Bibles, all biased against Latter-day Saints, and the Wycliffe Bible Commentary, which is definitely biased against Latter-day Saints. In fact, this isn't even a Bible, obviously, this is just a Bible commentary, and it is supposed to be read alongside a Bible. So, all of these from sources biased against my position, and hopefully I will still be able to defend my position using these biased sources. So, I'm going to start with Dake's Annotated Reference Bible. 1 Corinthians 15, one of the things that Paul is dealing with is people who have begun to say that there is no resurrection. So verse 29 says, "Else what shall they do which are baptized for the dead, if the dead rise not at all? Why are they then baptized for the dead?" Basically, Paul here is talking about them baptizing for the dead and saying that it's pointless if there's not going to be a resurrection, which it would be completely pointless to do if there's not going to be a resurrection. And then the only thing that this really has to say in the Dake's Annotated Reference Bible that I'm seeing here, inconsistency of critics baptizing for the dead, not believing in resurrection, present conflict to no purpose if no resurrection. It's not complete sentences, it's just little notes, the way they did it. But basically all they're saying here is, why would they do that if there's no resurrection? This Bible doesn't get into explaining what the practice is supposed to be or why. Probably because, being Protestants, they don't want to touch it. Most people don't want to touch this verse. They'd rather pretend it's not in there. But moving along, I'm going to next go to the English Standard Version Reformation Study Bible. The ESV I find to be the best translation of the Bible in general anyway. For reasons having nothing to do with this verse, I believe it is probably the best. If not this one, it would probably be the NASB, the New American Standard Bible, but that's neither here nor there. So, in this translation, the verse says, "Otherwise, what do people mean by being baptized on behalf of the dead, if the dead are not raised at all? Why are people baptized on their behalf?" So, this is a more clear rendering. Baptized for dead can be kind of twisted to mean something else if you're only going by the King James translation of it. But this one, and you'll see the other translation I'm going to use, is more clear, in more modern language, baptized on behalf of the dead. Yeah, that's the phrasing. So it's very unambiguous that people are having vicarious baptisms for the dead. And then here, the notes on this, 1529. Baptized on behalf of the dead. This is all they have to say about it. Numerous explanations of the practice have been proposed. all of them speculative and none persuasive. None persuasive. Maybe none persuasive to you. Just saying. Persuasiveness is 100% subjective. What's persuasive to me might not be to someone else, and there's something persuasive to them that isn't to me. They don't get to decide what is and isn't persuasive. They say none persuasive here as an excuse to not include anything. Because again, it's a Protestant study Bible, baptized towards Protestantism, which would be away from Latter-day Saints, of course. So they don't want to indicate that, maybe the Latter-day Saints got this right and everyone else is wrong because nobody else is doing it. The third Bible I want to look at is the Catholic Study Bible. This much for just the New Testament, by the way. This has way more notes and commentary in it than actual scripture, which might tell you a little bit about the Catholic Church, and that's as much as I'm going to say there. I promise I don't hate Catholics. Okay, so this translation. Otherwise, what do people mean by being baptized on behalf of the dead? If the dead are not raised at all, why are people baptized on their behalf? Again, clearly indicating that it is a practice in the early church that people are being vicariously baptized for the dead. All right? Their notes on here, 1529, baptized on their behalf. This passage continues to baffle interpreters. Since neither the form nor the meaning of this practice is familiar to us today. Obviously, it's familiar to some of us, but not everyone, I guess. Perhaps living believers were receiving baptism for the sake of deceased persons. Perhaps? That's exactly what the verse says. There's no perhaps. So perhaps living believers were receiving baptism for the sake of deceased persons, hoping its benefits would accrue to them in the afterlife. Then it cites 2 Maccabees chapter 12, verses 39 through 45. That is in the Apocrypha. That's not in the Bible. Another possibility is that Paul is talking about people who endure a baptism of suffering for the sake of others who are physically or spiritually dead. Either way, Paul reasons that such baptisms are pointless apart from belief in a future resurrection. Okay, so that gives two possibilities. One of those possibilities is exactly what the verse says. Then the other possibility is, in my opinion, it's like, how can we make it sound like those Mormons are wrong and we have an answer? Come on, dude. I don't see anything convincing about that, but maybe that's just me. I think it is very, very clear that people were being baptized vicariously on behalf of people who were already dead. Now, moving on to the Wycliffe Bible Commentary. Again, this isn't a Bible at all. This is all commentary meant to be read alongside a Bible. Very, very biased towards Protestantism. If you listen, you can hear the bias. And this one, I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to read all the way through, and then I'm going to say what I say. So I'm not going to interrupt like I just did. Baptized for the dead is a difficult expression which has been given many interpretations, some bizarre and some heretical. Some bizarre and heretical. For example, it is claimed by some that Paul refers to the practice of vicarious baptisms, such as is observed by the Mormons, although he did not approve of it. The practice, however, is known only as early as the 2nd century, and then among heretics. Others who feel that the apostle refers to those who were baptized on the basis of the testimony of someone who had died. The preposition hyper, rendered for in the AV, authorized version, may mean with regard to, although this is not the normal meaning. Still others feel that Paul refers to the baptism of young converts who took the place in the church of older brethren who had died. Hyper has the meaning instead of quite frequently, even in the New Testament, in as 2 Corinthians 5:15 and Philemon 13 indicate, although it is not the predominant meaning. The Greek expositors explained the expression as baptized with an interest in the resurrection of the dead, but this is unnatural for several reasons. The second and third suggestions are more in line with Pauline theology, but the interpretation remains difficult. Of course, they're going to say that every reason except what the Latter-day Saints are doing is more in line with Pauline theology. Of course they're going to say that, because to say otherwise would make the Mormons, as they said, the Latter-day Saints, look correct. So, of course, they're going to say that. Let me revisit one of the phrases here. Although he did not approve of it. Let's get something straight about Paul. He didn't have to approve of it. Paul, if you know anything about his character in the Bible, like if you read his letters, what does he do over and over and over and over again? If he catches false doctrine, he puts it on blast. If he catches bad practices, people sinning or whatever, anything wrong where they're going astray, he puts it on blast. And he is not afraid to call it out and call people out and tell them that they're wrong. If you know anything about Paul in the New Testament, then you agree with everything I just said. So, they said he does not approve of it. He doesn't have to. If you know Paul, if he doesn't tear something down, he approves of it. That's just his character. That's who he is in the New Testament. It makes no sense whatsoever for Paul to mention baptisms for the dead and not call them out as being a wrong practice if it's a wrong practice. So he really, they're kind of lying, because he did approve of it, actually. In my opinion, it is very clear he approved of it, because if he didn't, he would have called them out immediately. That's just who Paul is. So, 3 Bible translations, 3 study Bibles, and the Wycliffe Bible commentary, and I still don't see them being able... Basically, the best they can say is, well, the Latter-day Saints are doing what the verses say, but that can't be right because they're Latter-day Saints. So they gotta be wrong, but we can't think of a better explanation for what they're doing, so it's just a mystery that's up in the air. And we don't really know why that's in there or what it means. Yeah, I don't find that very convincing, but maybe you do.